Well, hello everybody. Welcome once again to the Van Buren Variety Show. I am Bob Van Buren, your host. Hey, I'm glad you're here, and all the people that are here for the first time, we're really glad you're here too. And if you haven't already, might want to say subscribe. Subscribe to the channel to get updates. A little bit about the show. I talk to a different guest each week about an interesting topic. It could be the person's profession. It might be a hobby. It could be maybe a how-to segment, how to make something, just a general interest, something that they think is really interesting or fascinating. Might even be some entertainment. So you never know, hence the word variety. So please subscribe to Van Buren Variety. I am simulcasting on other channels, but you might want to subscribe to Van Buren Variety because, that will come to an end pretty soon. And I'd hate to see you go. I hate to see you leave and miss all the upcoming guests that we have. So when you look, if you're not here already, look for that logo and subscribe. And then if you like the videos and that speaks out to you, make sure you hit that like button. I'm sure our guests would appreciate that as well. Hope you've had a really good week so far. Got a question for all my audience here before I bring my guest on. I have a picture here. It's actually in a big frame that was purchased in a department store many decades ago. There's always been a debate about where this picture was taken. It doesn't say where it was. It was just a picture you can put in your office or your living room. Let me show you the picture. I've always thought it was Hawaii, but y'all might have other ideas. So if you had to guess, I took the frame out of the picture, but where does that look like to you? I say Hawaii, but another family member said, no, that did not look like Hawaii at all. So if you can, leave some stuff in the comments because I'd like to see what your own opinion is. I mean, we may not ever know, but I guess they didn't think it was Hawaii because they don't see palm trees. But I don't know. I'm staying with Hawaii. So if you look at that and you've got any ideas, I sure would appreciate your opinions on that. So I don't know. It's somewhere. Maybe I'm thinking Pacific, but could be. Maybe it's somewhere in the Atlantic. I don't know. I'm staying with Hawaii for sure, no matter what my family says. So enough of that. So hopefully you can settle the debate once and for all. It's a pretty picture regardless of where it's at. Got a great, great guest tonight and with a great, great topic. You've heard it on television and radio and newspapers many times that it's very important that we take care of our health. Stay in shape. I'm the biggest offender of that. I need to get on that treadmill a little bit more than I've been doing. But we shouldn't ignore our mental health as well. I mean, your physical health is great. I mean, that's what keeps you going. But, the old mind up there, how do you relax? How do you deal with stress? How do you combine both of them? And in this interview, you're going to hear the term dynamic balance. Now think about that term just for a second. Dynamic balance. What is that? I had never heard of it until recently. In fact, the guest I'm going to bring on has written a book about it, Dynamic Balance, and I am looking forward to him telling us more about it. And you'll also hear how to order his book before the show's over. So without further ado, let me bring my guest on tonight.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to introduce you to Andy Chan. And I also would like to point out, ladies and gentlemen, this is an international show. While I am broadcasting live in the Central Time Zone in the USA, Mr. Chan here is live from Hong Kong, where it is 8 a.m. in the morning. So, Andy, I appreciate you getting up and early for this interview today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and you are right. I mean, it's an international show, and I'm excited for our chat and what I have in mind.
Okay, great. I'm going to learn a lot too. This is really something I need to be focusing more myself. And so let's just we talked about the book that you wrote, Dynamic Balance. So how would you describe dynamic balance? What is that?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, once we publish the book Dynamic Balance on social media, I would sometimes look at the Dynamic Balance hashtag, or I would just search up Dynamic Balance to see what other people think of the title, just to get a grasp of, the
Mm-hmm.
general public opinion. And most frequently, I would say most people would think that we're doing balancing exercises, as in maybe I'll be standing on a balance beam or I'll be closing my eyes doing all these funky balance exercises.
Uh-huh.
But in our book, what we're talking about essentially is how in our lifestyle, in our busy lives, we have a lot of things to juggle, right? Every single day, especially with the vast amount of information out there, we have to navigate through all the noise and clutter. And so
Hmm.
dynamic balance, what we're saying is essentially how we can balance different aspects of our lifestyle so that we can achieve optimal health and human performance.
That's awesome, and we all need that for sure. And telling you, I'm taking your advice in as well, not just my audience.
Well, I think you touched on a interesting point. I'm going to go a little bit off the tangent here, and that
Oh,
that
go
is
ahead,
being on the
please.
treadmill, being on the treadmill a bit more. I think I've been reading this book called Exercise recently, and it's a
Hmm.
professor that kind of examines the history of us exercising in the modern context. And what he's saying is this idea of humans being on a treadmill, we're asking for suffering. Essentially, it is unheard of in our history and in human nature 2 3 thousand years ago. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we get so caught up on the fact that if we exercise we have to be in the gym, although being in the gym is great because that means more business for me, right?
Right.
But we always say, we always say exercising. If you just go out for a walk with your dogs, if you just go hiking, just go grocery shopping, just walk more, I think that's sufficient. So if we can just come at exercise with this mindset of, oh, we're not talking about nothing fancy, nothing too strenuous, but if we can just kind of get the ball rolling and get some movement and activity in, I think we'll make great strides.
In other words, keep moving. Don't just be a couch potato. Get the body moving one way or the other.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, that's great. Let me just. And there's some other things that you've kind of touched on in your book, and also I know your biography. There's several things I'll ask you about. Number one is we call it exercise science. What's an exercise science?
Yeah, I love that question.
Hmm.
A lot of people just treat exercise as kind of the thing you do, right? A lot of people,
Hmm.
especially, so I spent 10 years in the US and
Oh,
I
good.
was in Massachusetts, I was in Connecticut, and then I was in Pennsylvania, and then I was in Indiana. And I- in most of the schools that I went to was in a rural area, so it was a small town, maybe 3,000 people.
Sure.
And you've
Uh-huh.
always got that local gym that you go to, and it's always super run down. And if you tell members at the gym that you have to pay for a personal training session, and if you tell them that you have to pay over $100 for someone who's qualified, they're gonna say that you're mad. Because why am I paying people to exercise? I just go do my bicep curls, or I just go on the treadmill, I just go on a run. And and this is where exercise science comes in because in short, I think the human I think in the past, people don't really treat exercise as a science because they think you kind of just go and do it. But
Hmm.
thanks to the pioneers in the field over the past few years, we do realize that there are ways to maximize our time and to kind of train in a way that give us great results. And that's essentially what exercise science has been after. How can we utilize what we have, to utilize the tools we have? How can we train in a variety of ways so that our
Hmm.
bodies can continue adapting, right? Because a classic example is some people might go on a weight loss journey and then they plateau after 3 months. Like they go on this
That
diet and then
happens.
they kind of,
Yes. Hmm.
yeah, they're like, oh, I'm not seeing any progress. Am I not doing enough? Should I do more? Well, at that moment, we know from from a basic principle that our body adapts after 3 months or so.
Hmm.
So we have to change the stimulus in every 3 months just so our bodies never get used to the stimulus. Therefore, we'll keep adapting, which means that we'll continue weight loss. In elite sports, there's the off season, there's the in season. Obviously, what you do
Hmm.
in these two time frames, who all are familiar, will be different. Because in preseason, I'm trying to prep my body so that I'll be ready for the long season. During the season, I'm trying to maintain my physical fitness so that I don't get injured.
Sure.
And and in all of these things, there's an element of science because after all, there's so much research out there that tells us how our bodies function, and if we can train and live according to how that's supposed to work, then that's going to only enhance our athletic performance.
Hmm. You said something earlier that I'd like to point out, and I'm guilty of this too. You're talking about how ways we can maximize our time. We've heard and I'm guilty of saying this too, is where, I just don't have time to work out. I mean, I have to go to the gym or I have to do this, do this. But yet we, and I say we collectively, we can spend 2 hours vegetating on the couch watching television, but we don't seem to find maximizing our time at the gym. So in a way, that's kind of a mindset as well. Correct?
It is correct, but I also it is unrealistic expectations. I think that's kind of more the core of the problem. I'll give you
Mm-hmm.
an example. 2 days
Okay.
ago, I went to the gym with my wife, and a little bit of context. Gyms in Hong Kong have been closed down, have been shut down for 3 months. So from
Mm-hmm.
January to April this year, fifth wave of Omicron. Can you believe it? They still decide to close down the gym and the restaurants and
Uh
everything
huh.
here in
Uh-huh.
Hong Kong. And so gyms finally opened back up last Thursday, and as you can imagine, it's a relief for everyone. And so I went to the gym. I was excited to get a workout session in. 10 minutes in, my mom called me and he said my son, because I have a 19-month-old son, so I left my son
Mm-hmm.
with my mom so that we can go work out. And then she called. She's like, "Oh, he pooped himself, so you have to come and change his diapers." And I was like, "Oh, I'm only 10 minutes in." But
Yeah.
that's what life does to you, right? You plan one thing and sometimes you have to go. But to me, that day was a success because at least I got 10, 15 minutes of cardio in. So
That's true. We
I
got
think if we just
something.
adjust our, yeah, it's something's better than nothing for sure. And so if we can just all align our expectations, if you just start out by doing 10 minutes of anything, I think it'll be a lot easier for you to ease into it rather than thinking, oh, let's be on the treadmill and be bored for an hour.
No, that's true. Yeah, because I've been on that treadmill. It just seems like it lasts forever. I mean, sometimes I listen to music, but it seems like the songs seem like they last a lot longer because I'm counting seconds down.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I hate the treadmill. I mean, you're going nowhere. You're staring at the window or the wall, even worse, and
Yeah.
time is so slow.
You mentioned something else in your bio. I found it really fascinating. And some people may not know what this is. We've talked about it in episodes, many, many episodes before, but let's just kind of remind our audience and ones that are new now. You mentioned holistic health. So describe holistic health. What is that?
Sure. Since again, to explain that, I also have to just share a bit about my background. I did spend 10 years in the US. I was born and raised here in Hong Kong before that. And
Mm-hmm.
after my 10-year education in the US, I came back to Hong Kong. So for me, I've always had kind of the two perspectives, and unfortunately they are at opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, there can't be
Mm-hmm.
nothing that's as different as the culture in the US and in this part of the world.
Sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
and so for me, the big thing when it comes to health is that in the US, people are taught in isolation. Meaning, in school we'll go to learn about the biology, we'll learn about the chemistry, and then we'll learn about the nutrition, we'll
Oh,
learn about
okay.
the anatomy. And
Uh-huh.
even within the anatomy, we'll learn of the different muscles and the way they produce different joint movements. Yet if you look at the human body, everything is connected, right? You cannot look at the psychology without looking at their diet, or you cannot look at the diet with looking at the psychology. You can't really look at the chemistry without biology. Point being, I think in the health and fitness space, we're just not making the connection because you just go to different relevant professionals for that field. While that's great because you should go to a relevant professional, most people are having trouble connecting the dots. And so for me, that's what I've been trying to do over the past 2 years, and that is to help people connect dots and to understand and know that ultimately it is the different aspects of lifestyle that constitutes your health and or that contributes to health, and it is paramount importance that we kind of take care of all these areas.
Sure. Well, let me ask you a personal question. How long have you really been into physical fitness? Has it been all your life? Did you just, young, your teenager, or did you just, suddenly say, I need to take care of myself? Or has it always been kind of a mindset with you?
Yeah, well, I love playing soccer growing up,
Oh, that's
and
a good thing. That's active.
uh, yeah, exactly. That's very active, and I got exposed to the gym when I was in 11th grade in high school, and like everyone
Hmm.
else, I just pumped up some chest press and bicep curls, and the stuff that a teenager would do. And then, but this was just kind of a hobby, and so I went to school. In college, my undergraduate major was actually in accounting. I've always thought I was going to be in
Mine
company.
too, but I changed it. I'm not. I used to
Yeah,
be a kind, but I decided to change it. I didn't want to write books all day or balance all day. It didn't sound fun to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sounds like we're similar because I could not imagine being in there for the rest of my life, and
Writing notes, yeah,
yeah, writing
uh-huh.
notes, looking at numbers, looking at decimals, making sure that everything is
Yep.
at balance and
Mhm.
exactly. And so, but when I came back from the US, right, I had the opportunity to become a professional soccer player. So I was given a
Oh,
chance to
good.
go on a trial with a local professional sports team. And I'm pretty sure no one's going to say no when you're offered a chance to go professional.
Yeah,
And
right,
and so I went on this
yeah.
trial. Yeah, exactly. So I went on this trial, and I still remember there was this one day we're doing agility drills. So for any listeners out there who doesn't know what agility drills are, basically you set up cones on the floor and you do all these flashy moves that you see on YouTube and all these great NFL athletes. They move their feet, and essentially the purpose of these drills was to or is to work on your agility, your coordination, and a little bit of your balance. So here's where my story in the bicycle and chest press came in. So one day, the fitness coach or the fitness coach, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey Andy, when everyone else is doing these type of drills, you just bound and you change direction, but when you do it, you're like a robot because you have your arms out to the side, and when you turn, you do like a 180-degree rotation before you change direction.
Mm.
And in other words, why are you so rigid?" And that was an epiphany moment because I realized that what I had been doing inside the gym did not translate to performance outside the gym. And that is because I was training to become buff, I was training to become rigid, and I can be honest with you, I
Mhm.
was training to be in better relationships and to be more attractive in college, as we all do. And yet
Build your confidence
that
up.
didn't. Yeah, exactly. My confidence up, but yet that did nothing to my athletic performance, and ultimately it shattered my confidence because
Oh, it
I
shattered your
realized, what.
confidence, yeah.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so that's kind of when I realized that I should look into this training more because I wanted to help the next generation of athletes who who are making the same mistakes. So I started doing personal training certification courses, and then I got into the industry and I realized, wow, what a competitive industry. If I want to be successful in this, and if I want to take my career to the next level, not only do I have to be a good presenter, I also have to be academically qualified. So that's when I went back to school and got my master's in exercise science, so that I can both be a good presenter and and have some substance in what I say.
How long did it take to get your match? Was it 4 years, 6 years, or how long did you have to go to school for that?
Yeah, master's was 2 years, though, two
Oh, it
year
was 2
program for the
years.
master's. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And usually a lot of master's programs are generally speaking, master's programs are a lot faster than the undergrad programs.
that's great. Yeah, because I mean, you like you said, when you want to present yourself, especially if you're a personal trainer, you got to present that image, that you care about yourself. That way, you can care about somebody else who maybe has the same goal and doesn't know where to start.
You're absolutely right, and but I've also in that note I've also taken a different route because I realize I do not desire to be that stereotypical trainer who just gives generic advice and who pretends that they have it all together. Because
Hmm.
believe it or not, I think sometimes in the fitness industry there's this false image that people are jacked and they're healthy and they're happy and they're, I don't know, whatever, they feel accomplished. But I that's not the route that I've been taking because I realize a lot of people are in a struggle, really, because at the end of the day, being in the gym for 3 times a week, it is tough, and finding time,
Oh
as you
yeah.
said in the beginning of the show, it is tough.
Hmm.
And so why don't I take that route and have some compassion rather than just saying, "Oh, why are you so lazy, Bob?" There's no
Hmm.
one wants to hear that, and rather than saying that, why don't I just acknowledge that we're all lazy inherently, and
Yep.
which is
I'm the
true.
big offender. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, why don't I just go that route and be human, not just this coach who lives in a parallel universe?
Sure. Well, we talked about, the importance of being in the gym and, and just, staying active overall. But there's another thing that you touched on in your bio that I read was not only is it important to stay moving and stay active, but what you eat, your diet. So let me ask you this: what is the importance of diet, of what you eat?
Yep. Yep. So I'll go at this from two perspectives. One kind of the Western perspective and one the Eastern perspective.
Okay.
So in the Western perspective, in the fitness industry, we often talk about energy in, energy out. So in weight loss, for example, the most one of the most common goals that people have, they'll talk about how we should consume less energy than we kind of dissipate, or we expand, because the equation is simple. If you consume less energy than you expend, then theoretically speaking, you will lose weight. Mhm. And so, therefore, under that assumption, perhaps different proteins do not matter as much, right? So that's why eating a fish will be the same as chicken, will be the same as supplements, given that
Hmm.
you're having quality protein. Yeah, I think in the Eastern perspective, they're going to challenge that because they say, well, different meat do elicit a different response. And I'd say anyone who has had food before will tell you that we all respond to different types of meat, different types of vegetable, different fruits, different things, different. We'll have different response for different variety of foods. So in the Eastern philosophy, food is just more, it's more than the sustenance of life, as we say. And so if we combine the two perspectives, then we'll say, yep, food does give you energy, but in addition to being mindful of all the calories and all the macro and micronutrients of the food, perhaps we can also think about how that fits into the way we respond to meat. So we shouldn't just eat the meat because it is healthy, but we should eat the meat that makes us feel good.
Absolutely. But and maybe you might want to do a public service announcement. I've known people in the past that they just, impossible. They want to lose weight and be good overnight. So they call it crash dieting, but what I would call it is starvation dieting. And to me, that doesn't seem too healthy. So describe the really why people shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I think that unfortunately the fitness industry is all about hope, and people tell you this unrealistic expectation and dream that you could achieve everything in 2 seconds, essentially.
Hmm.
And all these type of crash diets, or all these type of diets, all these type of exercise routines, I think ultimately they're setting you up for failure because you're going against how you're supposed to eat.
Right.
And I do think we all have an intuitive sense of what is right. And I bet you even the person who's having the crash diet would know that it's not right. But it's just they'll probably tell you, I'm willing to do anything, Bob, to get to my outcome. And so I think this is where we're trying to educate them that if you think about it, right, our current physique is a result of our habits from the past 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years,
Hmm.
whatever. And for you to think that you can reverse your physique in a week, I think it's just unfair to your past, right? Because you've
Yeah.
spent so many years eating chicken nuggets, and you're gonna go on a crash diet and then eat more chicken nuggets after the crash diet.
Yeah.
So
You're gaining right back. It's almost like a yo-yo in a way.
yeah, it is dramatic yo-yo indeed. Because most people, they go on a diet and then afterwards they're like, oh, I'm free from jail, and then they treat themselves to pizzas, and then it's never going back because compared
Yeah.
to the bland
Yeah.
food or the
Hmm.
non-food that you're eating, of course a pizza is delicious.
We have a comment from the audience that I'll bring up. I'll see if you have anything to say or correct. Let's play that on the screen. Grandmaster U of E says, on top of great nutrition and herbs and filtered water that's mineralized. Do you agree? Disagree? You want to add something to that, or?
I agree. I mean, I think that great nutrition and herbs are great, and obviously water that's natural. And what I should say is this: all of these things that are found in nature will have great nutrition, and then that includes herbs, water, and everything. It's just I think in recent years, because of the everything is industrialized and globalized, so we're eating a
Hmm.
lot of junk food, and if we just find things that are from nature, including water and herbs, I think we'll go a long way.
What about vitamins? What's your opinion on that? Good, bad, indifferent, or what? Mhm.
Yeah. So usually when you kind of interview a an author or a expert, or a subject matter expert on anything alternative medicine or Chinese medicine, they will bash on vitamins and say how we shouldn't do any supplements, we shouldn't do any pills, etc. For me, I take more of a balanced view because I do recognize that nowadays we just don't get enough nutrients from our diet. I think that's clear because back in the day, we'll eat all different, and when we butcher a cow, we'll eat all the intestines and all the meat. And
Hmm.
obviously, intestines is not acceptable culturally in the US because
Hmm.
what do you mean intestines? Or if
Yeah.
you look at a
Hmm.
chicken, I'm not gonna eat chicken feet. So
That's the Western
tangent. Usually,
side.
when
Yeah.
our friends coming, yeah, when I have friends coming over from the US, I'll order some chicken feet because it's a famous dish in the Cantonese culture, and they'll freak out. And I'll tell them about the collagen and the different hyaluronic acid and how that's good for the skin, good for the bones. In fact, I'm not even making it up. It's actually good for you, and yet they're just grossed out by it. So all that to say, back in the day, if we eat the entire chicken or entire cow, then we're gonna be much healthier because the
Hmm.
intestines are filled with different vitamins and
Yeah.
different micronutrients. Yet we're just not getting that from a diet because we're only eating the steak. And so I think that vitamins are a valid way to do it. I just think we have to be more diligent in finding quality companies because after all, we have to understand how vitamins are made. They're made artificially inside a lab. So if we can find better quality labs, better quality companies, then I do think that it will go a long way as well when it comes to your health.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. I've heard the saying, it's kind of a play on words, but I've heard you are what you eat, so in a way that's kind of true.
You are. I'm gonna piggyback on that, and you're right. You are what you eat, and actually, in fact, we have that quoted. We have that phrase included in Diet Balance,
Do you really?
and
Okay.
Yes, and the diet chapter. And in Chinese medicine, they would say that you should eat something that's similar for similar body parts, meaning that or this idea of like for like. Like if you want strong tendons, then you eat the tendons of whatever animal that you're eating because they're of similar quality. And if you and that idea is quite profound because in the past people would be like, "Ooh, what do you mean eat the same tendons or eat whatever that's like
Hmm.
for like?"
Like, what do you
But
mean
in
by
recent
that?
years,
Yeah.
yeah. But in recent years, we do know that it's from eating bone broths and from having bones in your soup, it does have a lot of the minerals that we do need for our bone health. And this idea of like for like that the ancient people have, it makes perfect sense and it's validated by research now.
Hmm. Absolutely. We kind of touched on this earlier, but I'd like to kind of get more in depth to it. We talked about, in fact, in my monologue you heard, I was talking about it's okay that, we need to keep moving. We need to be responsive to our physical health, but just as important is our mental health. So my next question for you would be, Andy, is what is the importance of your mentality?
Yep. In the modern society, I would say that most of us are too stressed out. I think there's just too much stimulus going on, meaning because society it the idea of hustle culture or the idea of working hard is seen as virtuous, right? And it is lauded upon, meaning that I should work hard, be a go-getter, I should just work. Yet I think this does nothing but harm to our mental well-being because
Hmm.
essentially we're just on the up all the time. We're trying to upregulate, we're trying to get coffee, we're trying to amp up because we think that being lazy is something that's negative, right? So Bob, you might think that today if I'm just sitting here doing nothing, I'm wasting time and that's not good and you feel guilty about it. And because you're
Hmm.
guilty about it, you're
I
gonna waste
do.
more time because
Yep.
it's just this spiral. Yet we do know that when it comes to your mental health, there needs to be downtime. I mean, this is where I usually bring the yin yang symbol and the philosophy. A lot of
Okay.
people so one of the points that we emphasize in Diet Balance is a lot of people sometimes think of Chinese medicine as a religion, and this is not true at all, because Chinese medicine it's a type of medicine back in the day, or that they're still practicing today. Now, some people treat it like a religion, but it's their life, and what we want to bring out is that a lot of philosophies are based on logic, because
Hmm.
back in the day they did not have fancy lab equipment, so they had to sit down and think about all these connections. So with that said, when it comes to the yin yang philosophy, we're all familiar with the logo. There's a black and there's a white, and
Hmm.
you see it
Hmm.
in different massage stores. You see it
Hmm.
in basically obscure places in the U.S., like where you doubt the legitimacy is where you probably see the yin yang sign. Yet, if you just think about the philosophy, it is just explaining two forces that are complementary yet contradictory. So, if you think about applying this to our emotions, we have stress and let's say we have relaxation, and we do know that stress, adequate amount of stress, is a good thing because it drives us to do
Yeah.
things,
Hmm.
right? You have scheduled zones for to release different episodes, and therefore you're more likely to get up and prepare for the episode because there's this stress.
Be doing
And
something.
on
Yeah.
the other,
Oh,
yeah, there's something there. But if there's too much stress, then
that's
you're
not
gonna be
good.
paralyzed by it. Yeah.
Yeah. You
and
just you
and yet
freeze. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, you can't do anything. So, and that's essentially what culture is these days, right? We have so much stress, we think about so much in life that we're not giving our enough time to be in the yin or be in the calm state. And so, for most people, we have to know that if you think about this black and white, well, ideally throughout the day, you have black and white. You're not just predominantly black or predominantly white in terms of your energy.
Absolutely. Got kind of an amusing comment from the audience. I thought I'd like to share that with you, talking about how lazy is not necessarily being a bad thing. You know, so I think he's commenting on that. But Mr. Gray 9 Owl says it takes great care and effort to be lazy. Hey, I agree. Right? Do you? What do you say? What's your comment?
My comment is it is difficult. I mean,
It's difficult.
I would
Yeah.
challenge anyone to just sit there and embrace boredom. I mean that you so usually instead of saying why don't we just sit there and be still, because that's kind of a toneless comment. I tell people to embrace boredom, and I'll challenge anyone just to sit there and space out, and you realize how hard that is, just
It
to be
is.
lazy. Because the next thing you do, so okay, so here I also have to I have to define my definition of being lazy or of rest. And so for me, if I'm to be lazy, I sit there and I'm bored. Like that's the state of me being lazy. Now, if I'm there and but yet I'm on my phone browsing, if I'm on Netflix, if I'm just scrolling through different ESPN channels, then that
Mm-hmm.
to me is not really resting because I'm still finding a stimulus. Because chances are, the reason why you keep flipping the channel is because you find that, oh, it's just a bit boring. I don't want to listen to Stephen A. So I'm gonna go on to the next channel, and that's you looking for stimulus. So I absolutely agree with the comment that it is difficult to just sit there and be lazy.
Because we live in such a hectic world. We have work. We have families. We have side. You know, hobbies we want to do. We got to have pets, or it just seems like sometimes we're just being pulled at the seams sometimes. So I agree with you. Just get in your chair and just take a breather, and what I say the term chill out for a while. So
Yeah, I mean, I admire those who lives in a small town, in the U.S., and they might be sitting in front of their porch and they have a tea or coffee. They're just there and they're reading newspaper or magazine, and they're just kind of sitting there and chilling there. And that to me is the ideal state that I'm always striving to do these days. That I don't just get consumed by everything else, but I just sit there and chill.
I want to promote your book. I've shown it here, but let me show a better photo here. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, it's called Dynamic Balance, and everything that he's talked about tonight, you'll find in this book. If not everything more, I mean, it's just loaded with good information. So, about how long did it take you to write this book?
Yeah, it took from the conception of the idea to its published date. It's 4 years, 3 4 years.
Oh, wow, 4 years. Oh,
Yeah, and although the book has 300 pages, I can guarantee you it's quite easy to read because the last thing that we like to do is to bomb you with information. So it is meant to be clear and easy to digest.
mm-hmm.
As I think audience can tell by now, I mean, I don't really mumble on for too long. I mean, I do go on for a while, but and I think that's the spirit of our book because we do want to be concise and to the point.
What I like about it, and I'll bring this back up here in a minute, ladies and gentlemen. But what I like about your book, Andy, what I've read, it's very interactive. So, ladies and gentlemen, what Andy just said is about bombarding with information. It's very interactive. You may not can see it clearly here, but it has questions for you to answer in here. I'll just read one at random here. One says, identify your dominant constitution type and its characteristics. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers here. I mean, if this is kind of your diary. Is that a good word for it, Andy, in a way?
Yeah, and I think to that point, understanding your constitution. So our book is divided into different parts, and the first part is to understand the basic terminologies of Chinese
Mm-hmm.
medicine, and the second part, which is where the question that you asked is from, it is a questionnaire identifying our current body state. Because remember, in diet, we talked about in Eastern philosophy, different foods elicits a different response. Like you respond to different meat in different ways. And so we have to figure out why that is. And it turns out in Chinese medicine, has been recorded that there are different types of meat for different body types. And what better to do than to understand our current body type? Because if we don't understand, then it's just all theory. Yet we believe that, even though we're the authors, the reader should be at the center of the story. So that's what we've been that's what we've done. We've included a lot of questionnaires and activities for them to participate in.
You got some praise actually for the book that I showed earlier. I'll bring this comment up. Mr. Gray 9L says, "Congrats on the book. It is a smaller group of talented individuals who are published." So I fully agree.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. It's heartwarming to hear that comment. Yet I would like to be vulnerable. I mean, 3 million books are published each year in
Oh
the United
yeah,
States
wow.
alone, and and so it is a lot of competition, and nowadays it's easier than ever to publish a book. For example, if you go on Amazon today, you can publish a book under 48 hours. So Bob, let's say today you want to publish, you just have to upload a PDF and you'll be a published author in 2 days. So
In no time at
for
all.
us to
Yeah.
work on this, yeah, it's not long, but of course the quality will be dubious just because it's so easy to publish. So for us, to be working on this for 4 years, and it is meaningful. It is meaningful.
Well, I'm going to bring this book up again, your book up again, Andy. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I highly recommend you get your own copy of this because I am looking forward to really delving into it myself. So, Andy, if there's somebody watching this right now, either they're watching this live right now or they watch it much later, days, weeks later, where would you suggest they go to purchase your book?
Yeah, Diamond Bounce is available wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Hudson, Book Depository. I think it's even in Target.com, and
Oh,
yeah, it's
really?
available
Oh,
everywhere. Yeah, I saw it. I saw it when it first came out. I'm not sure if it's still there, but yeah, it's available everywhere. So you can just do wherever that you have reward points available.
I would like to kind of point out where it says dynamic balance, but below it says integrating principles of traditional Chinese medicine into strength and conditioning. Can you give us an example of traditional Chinese medicine?
Yep. So traditional Chinese medicine. Well, put it this way, the whole point of us writing this book is because this is the first book in the market that examines the traditional medicine philosophy for those who are interested in fitness.
Okay.
Because the whole idea or the genesis of this idea was that back when I was writing the book or when I was brainstorming, I was looking online and there weren't that many books that explain the Chinese medicine philosophy for athletes, even if there's a lot of Chinese medicine treatments out there, like acupuncture, cupping, gua sha, or scraping. And so we just wanted to give people in fitness an overview of the system so that they can consider different perspectives. And when we think about Chinese medicine, it is an ancient system of medicine. And essentially, in one simple line, we can say that good health relies on our body's ability to cope with the changes in the surrounding environment. So if you think about the surrounding environment, you've got different temperatures,
Mm-hmm.
and in different seasons you feel different way, right? If the season changes abruptly, not only does it affect you physically, it affects you mentally. Oh, geez, it's raining outside or it's snowing outside. I cannot do the activities today, so I'm stuck inside. And we know that the change in season will have an impact on our body, and therefore what Chinese medicine is saying, if our body is not able to cope, then we're going to have sickness and injury. So therefore you have foods and you have different activities that you do for the season to combat against the changes. And I understand some people might think we're crazy because what do you mean, why don't I just eat the same food year round?
Yeah.
But a perfect example would be, let's say today it is about to be summer here, so a lot of people will go to the beach. And Bob, let's say today you and I are sitting next to the beach. Are you gonna order a coconut water or are you gonna order hot chocolate? Let's say
On
it's
the
like 90
beach?
degrees outside. Yeah,
Yeah,
beach.
the coconut water for sure.
Coconut water, no question. I mean, who's gonna order hot
Hot
chocolate
chocolate.
when
Yeah.
you're next yeah, because hot
Yeah.
chocolate is for winter or for
Mm-hmm.
bonfire or for a colder temperature. And that's the essential idea of Chinese medicine. That is, we intuitively know that coconut water, it's soothing for the body, kind of cools us down, it's right for the atmosphere, and that's what diet is all about in Chinese medicine. Are we eating foods that matches the current atmosphere, and whether that's the season, the climate, or the geographical location? And that's what Chinese medicine is about
That's
when it comes to
okay.
diet.
That's great. I was asked a question in the chat. I'll just kind of ask it here. Uh, Someone's interested in buying your book, but they want you to have and your authors to have most of the profits. So, is there a way? I mean, in other words, they don't want. I guess I'm paraphrasing a large corporation to get most of your hard-earned money. So, is there a way they can order you from direct that more you would see more of the profit margin?
Yeah, well, that is very considerate, and I'm almost crying. Honestly, I'm touched by this comment. But yeah, I can be honest. I think at this time, I would prefer if people buy from the bookstores, just so we get the
Okay.
numbers up. Because so from a business perspective, let's say if I'm growing my brand in the US, which I am, I could sell my own copies, but that doesn't go into the official count of the number of copies that I've sold. And so if I can
Hmm.
just direct everyone to buy from the bookstores, although I don't get as much profit, but in the long run, I know this is better for the next project that I might engage in if I do write another book.
Okay. You also have a website, correct?
I do. My website is chishu.com. So I know my name is Andy Chan as listed here. So I go by the name Andy, but my legal name is actually Chichu. So TSZCHIU. And that's the name of my website, www.chichu.com.
I'm going to put it in our chat, both in this one and the one we're simulcasting on, but I'm also going to display it for everybody. So if you can give me just a few minutes, bring that up. Is this the website here?
This is the website.
Okay. Well, can you let our audience tell us what would happen? What do they see when they come to this website? What will they encounter? What do you got for us?
Sure. So when they go to the website, they will essentially see how amazing I am. Unfortunately, that's what websites are about.
Hey, that's nothing wrong with
And
that. Nothing wrong with
there's
that.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't be an imposter right now.
You got to
Be
pat yourself
confident.
on the back sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, let me tell you, it is hard sometimes when I go out and I get all these compliments because the last thing that I want to do is to let my ego take over my career. And we all know how dangerous pride and ego are to kind of our minds and the way we approach decisions. So I've been very conscious of that. But if you go to teachu.com, I do have to promote myself, and you'll find different. First of all, you find my story. So what I do and my why, what I'm trying to do in this crowded fitness space. And then you learn that I do three things. I do personal training, I do a lot of corporate
Wow.
talks these days, and I do group classes, and I do, public presentation. So what I have to offer, and then ways to get in touch with me, essentially.
In fact, that was my next question. I know you're in Hong Kong right now, but do you do, like I would say, Zoom meetings or meetings where like people all over the world, counting the U.S., could kind of tune into your speeches for your presentations?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I'm still figuring out how to kind of roll out this personal training worldwide, whether
Oh,
that's through
that's
an
good.
app or through Zoom sessions, because I can the biggest trouble would probably be scheduling, and
Oh,
to kind of
sure.
integrate it
Hmm.
with my schedule in Hong Kong, and so I've been trying to work that out, and I would say if you're interested, please just send me an email at andy@teachu.com, and we can go from there. But in terms of talks, I do a lot of webinars, and unfortunately, those are private at the moment. So if you
Oh, that's
just want
fine.
me to do a webinar for you or your friends, you can just also reach out to me.
Do you have a blog as well?
I do have a blog, but I seldom update it. I have to do a better job promoting myself, Bob. Let me tell you, I do have a blog, but I'm also on social media. If anyone is on Facebook or Instagram, so my Instagram is Teach You Andy, and then my Facebook, you just search Teach You Andy Chan, it should come up. Please, if you're on Facebook, don't search Andy Chan, because okay, so the reason why
There's probably
I
other
hate
Andy
my
Chans out there. Uh-huh.
so why don't you guess how many Andy Chans are there on Facebook? A rough estimate,
If I
Bob.
had to guess, I'll say 1,000. Is that too low?
3 million.
There are 3 million Andy Chans in the world.
Yeah, I hope
Oh,
the audience they're also kind of have their eyes open like yours. Like I mean, one day I searched it up and they said there are 3 million accounts named Andy Chan, because Andy is one of the most popular first names
it is.
there, and then Chan is one of the most popular last names in
Like,
China.
I hate to say it, Jackie Chan. We've all
Jackie
heard
Chan,
it.
yeah, yeah. When I went to the U.S. for the first 2 years, I tell people Jackie Chan is my uncle, and they believe me because
They believed you.
they believe me because obviously I mean cultural. I mean they I was 13 at the time, and people thought that last names are kind of it's hard to have the same last names. But
Unique,
in
yeah.
Hong yeah, yeah, in Hong Kong it's the exact opposite. It's hard to have duplicate first names, but easy to have the same last names.
Wow, I bet. And people believed it. Oh, man, be good to him. He's Jackie Chan's nephew.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's my uncle, and yeah. It's it's it was fun until they find out that that is not true.
Yeah, right. Well, let me ask you. I shouldn't have taken that off. Let me bring your website back up. Let's see. Actually, I think we have a question. Let's see. Let's see. And during a live show, sorry about that. Oh, here we go. So just kind of tell me again. What's the pronunciation? You say jitsu? How do you say it?
Yeah, so the TSZ, it's meant to pronounce like Ji Chu.
J. Oh, jitsu. Okay, like a J
Yeah,
in America.
yeah,
Okay,
like a
all
J,
right.
like a Ji Chu. Yeah, it's just my uh so in Hong Kong the official language is Chinese and English, right? So I have a Chinese name, and I don't know why people would do the translation TSZ because there's no vowel in it, but I'm guessing English wasn't my parents' first language, so they didn't think about the vowel part. Yeah, and so yeah, when I was in school, so my first name is Chi in its entirety. So there are two
Oh, is
characters,
it?
yet
Okay.
there's a space. Yeah, so there's a space between Chi and Chu. Yet a lot of people, because in the US they think T as Z is just my first name. So in school, a lot of times you have a T as Z and then Chan. And the professor will have no idea what this name is, how to pronounce it. So usually instead of pronouncing my full name in roll call in the first day of class, they'll say I don't know. They would just say Chan, and
Chan.
it's yeah, exactly. And so
Oh,
it's a full. I've had good 10 years in the U.S. and honestly speaking, I've had a great time.
that's awesome. Wow, man, there's so much information that you have here. And I have another question. Uh, can anyone adjust their lifestyle by following your guidance in the book Dynamic Balance?
Oh, sure. I mean, I can say for sure that all of the advice are practical. Like this interview so far about the 10-minute exercising. I can share one clear practical takeaway that everyone can do today. And
Okay.
that is okay, so we talked about the mental well-being and how do we
Mm-hmm.
regulate our emotional
Sure.
health. So these days, if you go on different social media channels, if you go on websites, they'll say you should do some breathing practice, or you should go on a wellness retreat, or you should enroll in this yoga or breathing meditation class. I think that's unrealistic, just me. So in my 7 8 years in the industry, I've never told anyone to go do a breathing class unless if they ask whether the breathing class is a good class, because that's a different question. But I never voluntarily just direct people to a breathing class because I think a lot of us just don't really have the time, or we're just not
Mm-hmm.
enthusiastic about the idea of sitting there for an hour doing meditation. What I do, however, every single day is throughout these windows in between my sessions, when I'm waiting for the elevator, when I'm waiting for a meal, I
Mm-hmm.
do breathing practice. And how do we do
Oh,
that?
well.
You just have to remember 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. You might think, what a peculiar number. Why 5.5? Well,
Mm-hmm.
this 5.5 is universal in all the historic cultures. So it's
Really?
mentioned in the book
Oh,
Breath
wow.
by James
Hmm.
Nestor. So if you look at different cultures, most of the breath they last for 5.5 seconds on average, which means that we breathe through the nose for 5.5 seconds and then exhale in the same amount of time. And I do that throughout the day whenever I remember. And to me that is quite realistic and attainable.
I think
But
so
I'll tell
too.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, just breathe. And then two is to embrace boredom because in a way we might feel that we have to take out our phones. We might feel that we have to turn on the TV because we're dozing off. That's not good. I'm dozing off. But dozing off, it's actually a perfectly legitimate response that your body is telling you something. So just doze off and enjoy that state.
Like the old saying goes, to make some time to go out and smell the roses. We've heard that
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, exactly. And actually, I will go a bit further. And to me, the most important time for me throughout the day to do this breathing practice is right before my meal.
That's a good
So
idea.
it's
Mm.
a good idea, right? So in the introduction, we talked about how we focus on the athlete's holistic health, and here's where I want to tie it back. And in Diet Balance, in fact, we in the latter parts of the book, we looked at how your diet, your emotions, and your training they are intricately linked. And why is that? Well, if you think about a stress response, let's say in a mental stress response, there's this response known as the fight or flight response.
Fight or flight. I've
And
heard of
in
that.
that
Yep.
fight or flight, yeah, you've heard of that. And in this response, essentially, what this response is referring to is, let's say if there's a predator in front of us, We either have to fight a predator or we just flee from it. And as such, because we're stressed, is a life-threatening situation or it's a perceived life-threatening situation, our
Hmm.
bodies have to become rigid and tight, and the circulation has to go to the muscles so that we'll be ready to dash out. And well, why is this relevant to modern day context? Well, if you think about the important meeting, or if you think about like me before the show, my stomach will be a bit upset because when we're anxious, think about it, when we're anxious, we get an upset gut. And turns out when we're in that fight or flight state, our digestive system temporarily takes a break so that different parts of the body can utilize these resources.
Sure.
Yet, because we're all living in that stressful state, if we are stressed while eating, we just won't absorb the nutrients that we have. Meaning, you could eat however healthy you want, right? You can eat all the superfoods, or you're not even eating anything, yet you find yourself rigid and you're having digestive issues. So that might be an implication that perhaps you should work on down regulating your mood or your mental well-being before your meal.
That's good. That's good advice. Yeah, I can remember that for myself. I mean, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, just kind of, I guess you could say diffuse, so just kind of cleanse, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and the second thing is just not to get too pissed off or aggravated when the meals
Right.
take forever to come.
That's so hard, Andy. That's so hard for me to do.
Hey, why is it not here? It's been 3 minutes, literally. It's been 3 minutes.
Hey, we got a question for you, not related to your book, but it's just someone who's kind of curious, because you said you've lived in United States and you're in Hong Kong now. So I'll bring this question up. CDS Watchers wanting to know how different is the tempo of life in Hong Kong than in America?
Yeah, I would say that in America, in the sense that I've only been, so I would only visit the big cities in vacation because I mostly spend my time in smaller towns and even when I was in university, I was in Bloomington, Indiana. The town was 100,000, so that's
Oh,
considered a
wow.
huge town by the standards of the U.S. But I've got more people in my neighborhood within a 1 mile radius than the entire town here in Hong Kong. it,
Wow. Oh.
it is hard to imagine. I mean. Um, in fact, I just want to just turn my camera a little bit
Are you going
and
to show
grab
us some Hong Kong? All right. This
some
is,
Hong Kong see. So this is a residential neighborhood that I'm in, and you can see it's
oh
just
my
buildings and buildings
goodness.
and buildings, and all of them go to the 30th floor, and like yeah.
You
So
said the 30th floor?
yeah, at least I mean most building at least the 30th floor, and so
Wow.
tempo in Hong Kong is a lot faster just because everything is a lot closer. So in the US, it is normal for people to drive for 20 minutes to get to the grocery store, for
Oh,
example.
sure.
It takes me a minute to get to the grocery store. So in a day, I could technically even so there's a Disney in Hong Kong, so I could go to Disney and back within an hour.
Oh,
And as in the commute time is only like 45 minutes there. So I could go to Disney, come back, do a bunch of stuff. So as a result, it's a lot faster here because everything is more convenient. But because everything is convenient, it's actually not good for the health because you feel like
yeah.
you have to get so much done in a day because everything is so close by.
It's right
So
there at you.
yeah, it's like, oh, I have to get this done, I have to get this done, I have to get this done, and ultimately, I think if you come to Hong Kong, so there's this area that people would tourists would love to go because there's just so many people in just this one
Hmm.
street that people cross. Tourists will find that fascinating because everyone's walking so fast. They're on the go and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. But once you actually live there, you get so aggravated because in Hong Kong, so when you bump into each other, you never say sorry. You bump into each other, you just keep going.
You
And
don't
in
say,
fact,
I'm
now I
sorry,
brace.
excuse me, pardon me,
Nope.
nothing.
Yeah. Nope.
Oh,
No.
wow.
None of that. And
Mm.
uh, and I remember when some of my U.S. friends they come over and they're like, "Oh, how do you say how are you in Cantonese, or how do you say how are you in Chinese?" I'd say you could say it, but no one says it. I mean, it's just not the thing to ask. How are you doing? Because it's just kind of like weird. I mean, you don't ask how each other's doing. And the last thing I want to say is, in the small towns that I've been in, people hold doors for other people, or they
Hmm. They
stop
do.
when there's a crossroad, right? And you kind of stop and you let the people go, especially if they're elderly or kids. Here, it just doesn't happen. I mean, people don't even stop at the stop sign. And when you go to the crossroads, people just go and
You
if
just
you have your
go.
blinker signal, yeah, if you have your blinker signal, let's say if I want to go to the right lane, I turn my blinker on, people accelerate. I'm not even joking. We can ask anyone. They accelerate.
Wow. Oh wow!
Yeah,
But and you know that's those when you showed us the video outside just now. I mean, where you're at right now at the time of this recording, it's a work day. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? So people are going to work or they're at work right now.
yeah, they're going to work, they're at work, and I wish I could do this on the street because I can show you how everyone's kind of in a hustle, and they just look soulless and emotionless because they're just rushing to work in a crowded commute.
Kind of like storing up an
But
ant bed, I guess.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I would say to anyone who's listening, you should appreciate the fact that people hold the door for you. I mean, it's these
Yeah.
small kind of acts that we kind of take it for granted, and I certainly did in the U.S. because you don't realize how what a significant impact that kind of makes your day when people kind of just slams the door on you or don't let you switch lanes when you have your blinker signal on,
Hmm.
or they just bump into you without saying sorry.
Right. Well, Andy, I'm going to bring up your book again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is called Dynamic Balance. Andy's great book. And again, I have got my own copy and I'm already digging into it right now. So believe me, I need it. I think, everybody needs, no matter their health or their, mental state, I think this is a great book to check out. And you did a great job. Andy, do you see yourself publishing any more books or writing any more beyond this?
I think I first have to see a need because I don't want to do it for the sake of doing it. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, in this Iron Balance book, I do believe that there was a legitimate need just because there wasn't a book out there.
Mm-hmm.
And even for all the Chinese medicine books out there, it was often deemed as mystical and religious. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly because of my religious faith, I just I know that this is not religion because so I'm a Christian and just throw it out there
Very good.
and a lot of times back in the U.S. we there will be conversation of whether this is a religion and should we stay away from Chinese medicine because there's all these different type of mystical practice that they do. But that's the very reason why I'm writing the book because in Hong Kong it is there are some people who treat it like religion, but most people treat it like a medical system. So if we can just bring that perspective to the US, I think we can demystify and unpack this seemingly ancient and esoteric language that people just don't understand. And so I think in the future, I might write another book on coaching and on
Mm-hmm.
communications if the opportunity arises, because that's another topic that I am passionate about and that I can contribute to the world. But so far, I'm just focusing on dynamic balance.
That's awesome. And yeah, I said I highly recommend everybody that's watching this to buy his book and also go to his website. There is the website again in front of you. It's www.tszchiu.com. And you'll find a wealth of information there and more about his personal journey. So really, really highly recommend. Andy, I appreciate you being on the Van Buren Variety Show tonight. I know there's a 13-hour difference, so I appreciate you. I'm kind of in the evening and you're kind of in the morning, so I'm glad we were kind of able to connect that way.
Yeah, and just one last tip for everyone. Remember after the show to work on your breathing practice and to embrace boredom, because I think that if there is one takeaway, right, and obviously I could say buy my book, but that's not what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say you should work on your wellness by just start off by working on your mental health by breathing, because that's the one small practical thing that we can do anywhere, anytime, any day.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, again, I appreciate your help, and I'm looking forward to reading your book. Definitely. Well, I'll even give you some feedback as I go along, kind of where I'm at.
Oh yes, please. And if you ever have any thoughts about or comments about the diet balance, please. Anyone else, please just send me a message. Any feedback is welcome, as long as they're constructive.
Sure. Hey, absolutely. Well, Andy, I hope you have a great day, and again, thank you for being on the show, and have a great week.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for tonight for the Van Buren Variety Show. I'm certainly glad you're here. I want to remind everybody, all good things have to come to an end sometimes. And I want to start off by saying I appreciate the other channels that have allowed me to simulcast my episodes on their channel. But, I need to come back, bring everybody here. So if you're watching this on another channel, I appreciate that the support, but make sure you come over here and your YouTube browser, look for Van Buren Variety and subscribe because I'd hate to see, hate to lose you. but I do appreciate the other people that's allowed me to simulcast on other channels other than my own. So that's Van Buren Variety, Van Buren Variety. Look for that signal or that symbol right there and subscribe, and you'll catch all the future guests and interesting topics as well. So that's all for me tonight. I appreciated Andy's time. I've learned a lot, and again, here's his book. I can't say enough good about it already. So I will see you next week with another guest and an interesting topic. So for now, this is Bob Van Buren for the Van Buren Variety Show. Good night, everybody. Have a great week.